And I see Justin, who is the most important person to this next session, it looks to be ready and available. So uh, we will move right in and let Justin take over and talk to us about virtual meetings.
Thanks so much, Dana. And good noontime and welcome to Rotary. We're so glad you've stuck with us all morning long. There's still some great information to come. A lot of people have put a lot of hard work into making this a great show for you. I am Justin Jones. I am the president of the Rotary Club of Kingsville, and I am here today to be your technical guidance Sherpa. I want to reiterate a few housekeeping rules. Please mute yourself when you are not talking. Please refrain from using the chat box for socializing, and turn your camera on so that you're engaged in the meeting. If you have not yet done so, please rename yourself. The reason I keep mentioning this, even though we're at the end of our meeting here, is these are good ways to get your participants to be involved and engaged in your meeting, even though we're doing this virtually. So, what are we learning today? We're learning about Zoom things. Is Zoom the only online meeting platform? No, of course not. It's not even, Wayne, yes, you're right. Thank you so much. It's not even the oldest. There are lots of others, GoToMeeting, WebEx, uh, Teams, and all sorts of other stuff. Zoom has been adopted more or less as the de facto platform for Rotary. And in fact, if you go to your global rewards, so we've talked about myrotary.org account a few times today, you can get 20% off of a subscription to Zoom. And so today's topic will be specifically regarding Zoom and the Zoom tools. So let's first get familiar with our space, our Zoom space. This is what I'm going to be referring to as the Zoom toolbar. These are all the little different tools that we have generally at the bottom of your Zoom window. Different platforms might do these things a little bit differently, but the functionality is still there. So starting on one side, we have our mute button. Obviously, we can use this to mute and unmute ourselves, but if you notice, there is a little drop, depending on where your toolbar is, a drop down or a drop up menu on that with a few more options. If you have multiple microphones set up on your device, you can choose which microphone to use. You can choose which speakers to use if you're having any trouble there. And you can also use the test speaker and microphone option to make sure that your speakers are working correctly, that it's coming through which set of speakers you intend to use, and you can test your microphone for audio connectivity and such. If you hit that option, a little pop-up window will come in on your Zoom window. It'll play a little tune. You go to the next thing, and then you'll go through your microphone setup. Another way to do that is to just hit the audio settings button at the bottom, which then takes you to the settings dialog box. And here are a few important things to be aware of. You can adjust your speaker volume. So Zoom does things a little bit weird and kind of takes over your system just a little bit. If for some reason your computer sound, the volume up and down isn't controlling your speakers, if you're attached to an external monitor, Zoom does some weird stuff. You might need to adjust your volume control using the speaker volume bar here. Another thing to be aware of is your microphone volume. It's not actually volume, it's actually gain, but nobody knows what gain means, and so it's called volume here. A common problem, so by default, automatically adjust microphone volume is checked. That sometimes causes problems with some folks, and they'll get too loud or too soft. And so one thing to try is to, where's my cursor, is to uncheck the automatic button and manually control your microphone volume. So you can see that I have mine turned pretty high up. It's about 85, 90% on this toolbar. And so that's what is appropriate for my microphone. But be sure to play with some of these settings before your meeting to see what works for you and your system. Some other considerations regarding audio is the source of audio that you're going to be using. You can use the computer microphone that's built into your laptop. Most modern laptops have a built-in camera and microphone setup, and that's certainly an option. The next step is using earbuds, wired or wireless earbuds. Stick them in your ears, and they have an inline microphone. One problem that I have found with this type of setup is when I put this in, then the microphone is right here and it's right at my collar. I typically wear collared shirts. And so if you kind of move around and do some of this kind of stuff, that microphone rubs on the collar and it provides a lot of noise. It's similar to this. And so it's an unpleasant sound. And so I moved away from that and I've gone into the third option, which are over the ear headphones with a boom mic. I'm not sure if you can tell, but there's a boom microphone that I have out here. The next option up is a standalone mic. And Dana, is your daughter in today? I didn't see her.
No, she wasn't able to join, but she has one. You're right.
Yeah, and so Deanna has a podcast setup, and so it's a standalone microphone. It's a USB connection, and it has a little windscreen and all that kind of stuff. And so that is certainly another option. But the more effective an option is, also the more expensive it gets. The reason that all of these things are important is because the type of microphone and which microphone you use can pick up extra ambient noise or cancel out some ambient noise. And so things like kids running across the house or dogs barking because it's time to go outside, or if you're in a big empty room with hardwood floors and nothing on the walls, it can be an echo chamber. And so you get a lot of echoes coming in from the background. And so that's where different microphone setups are helpful if you do a lot of these types of meetings, particularly if you host lots of these types of meetings. Another thing that you want to be aware of is to perform an audio test. And so these are looking for things like plosives and fricatives and sibilants. And so what on earth are those? Well, plosives are your B's and your D's and T's and G's. And so things like pa 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 pa, ba 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 ba. Sibilants are S's and Z's and stuff like that, where wind is rushing out of your mouth. Why is any of that important? I'm going to adjust my microphone improperly and show you how annoying it can be. If I were to put my microphone directly in front of my mouth and I do pa 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 pa, ba 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 ba, test 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 test, that's bloody awful, and your message is going to get lost. Nobody's listening to you. All they're hearing are your plosives and your sibilants. What I like to do is actually set it out away from my mouth like that, so that I'm not breathing directly into the microphone. If you have a standalone microphone, that's the same thing. That's what the windscreen does, is it tries to prevent that rush of wind hitting that microphone condenser. Things to think about before you start your meeting. Our next option over is the video icon. Of course, we can use that to turn on and off our video camera. It too has options with the little up arrow. And if we go to our video options, it takes us to our video settings dialog box. And here are a few interesting settings that you might not have seen. And so you have a drop down menu here where you can choose which camera to use if you have multiple cameras set up on your machine. Why would you have multiple cameras? Maybe you're doing a hybrid meeting, and maybe your laptop probably doesn't have a camera on the other side of the screen. And so maybe you need a camera facing the room. And so maybe you're on a desktop computer that doesn't have a built-in camera. And so, oh, is Dana showing off? Well, Dana's is fancy. Thanks, Dana. And so maybe you're on a desktop computer that doesn't have a camera built in. And so this is where you would choose which camera to use. 16:9 and original ratio. 16:9 is widescreen. Original is 4:3. And so that would put little black bars on the side of your video if you were to do that. HD gives a fuller view. Now, mirror my video, depending on your device, things might be backwards in your virtual background, or on if you're wearing a Rotary t-shirt and it shows up backwards on the video camera, then that's where you would flip it, hit mirror my video, and that changes things. Kent, are you showing that for us? And there are some other options on touch up my appearance, adjust for low light, and those are kind of white balance and things on your camera. Scrolling down, there are a few other interesting settings to take a look at. The one that I'm going to bring your attention to is this bottom option. Again, depending on your device, if your graphics processing unit, your GPU will allow it, you can potentially display up to 49 participants in one screen. And so we're talking about being in gallery view, and we'll get a little bit more information on that in just a minute. But in gallery view is where you see everybody's video tiles in front of you. And so if you check that button, then you can see almost 50 folks on one screen, as opposed to having to go to screen 2, screen 3, so on and so forth. If you're in a small meeting, that might not be that useful. If you're in large meetings, such as this one, where we have 57 participants, then it can be helpful. So some video considerations. Again, is your video source, whether it's the computer camera or whether it's a standalone camera, and we've talked about how to select those. And front lighting and rear lighting. What I mean by that, front lighting is lighting up you, lighting up your face. And so my setup here, I have a large window, it's letting in natural light on this side. I have a lamp over here providing auxiliary light over here. And in fact, I've got a big giant external monitor. It's actually a TV, and I've changed the background color on my desktop to white so that that's actually acting as more light. So here's what happens if I even turn that lamp off. So then you have a lot of shadows. If I open the blinds all the way, I get blown out by too much light coming in over here. And so it is a balance between what different light sources you're using. This can be difficult as you're nearing the nighttime, as we often do with Rotary Leadership Institute. That's the third plug today for RLI, because we start getting dark and this side gets dark, and so I have to have another auxiliary lamp over there. Rear lighting is another problem. I'm going to try and do this delicately without unplugging my stuff. If I put my back to that window, so now I have all of that light coming in behind me. Well, now you can't see me at all because there's too much light behind me. If I go this way, now I have all of my light in front of me, and so you can see me better. Let me put my stuff back over here before I drop something. And so that's what we mean by front lighting and rear lighting. Lots of considerations when we're working through those. I have a couple of questions coming in through the chat box. Corina asked, the 49 button is not enabled, so that probably means that your GPU will not handle that many video tiles, because it is very resource heavy. And so some devices aren't able to handle that. Same thing with, actually, let me go back here. And so same thing with virtual backgrounds. And you can see that option over here on the left side, the left tab, backgrounds and filters. Some systems cannot support a virtual background or cannot support it real well. Jay Dean is showing that for us. Actually, I don't notice any difference, Jay Dean. You look just the same. But it's entirely dependent upon your system because of the resource load. It's very taxing on a computer. And so, Corina, that's probably why you don't see the 49 option. Tablets. So Kent, thank you very much for showing us rear lighting. Thanks so much. I'm sure you did that on purpose. Any more questions on video things? All right. Our next option over is our security features. Now, I also want to mention that the toolbar, the Zoom toolbar, is going to change depending on whether you are simply attending a meeting or whether you are a host or a co-host. Some of these options are not available to attendees. They're only available to hosts and co-hosts. The reason that I bother mentioning it to you, even though you're attending this meeting, is because we're all leaders in our clubs and in our areas. And so we will likely be hosts and co-hosts of future meetings for our constituency. And so that's why I want to show you a lot of these things behind the curtain. This is how we make the sausage. So the settings menu has some options. Oops, I didn't do a very good job at that. If I were to have zoomed in on that, you would see that the top option is to lock the meeting. We rarely do this because that means that nobody else can come back into the meeting after you lock the meeting, because we know that folks get kicked off or they need to step away and they need to come back in, things like that. And so we rarely lock the meeting. The one time that we have is district assembly during the four-way test speech contest, and we locked the meeting so that new attendees coming in late to the meeting wouldn't distract our student speakers. And so that's the one time that we did that. Otherwise, I never lock a meeting. Enable waiting room. And so I like to do this for smaller meetings, and that way it's a little bit of a hurdle so that somebody doesn't come and Zoom bomb you. And so you're manually letting folks in. Not only is it a security feature, it's also nice housekeeping. Before you start a meeting, it gives everyone a place to convene. I open my meetings for our noon meetings at 12. Before that, everybody's in the waiting room. After that, I manually let them into the from the waiting room. So that's our next option. And then we can select on what permissions we allow participants, whether or not they can screen share, whether or not they can chat, whether or not they can rename themselves or unmute themselves. And so in many of our types of meetings, their trainings are supposed to be interactive. So we want the chat. We want you to be able to unmute yourself. We want you to be able to rename yourself. And so I leave all those options open. Moving one over is our participant pane. If we click that button, it opens up the participant pane. If you hover over your own name in the participant pane, then you have some options such as renaming yourself. If you hover over someone else's name in the participant pane, it brings up a little drop-down box. The top option is chat. And so you can initiate a chat with somebody directly from the participant pane. If you are the host, you can assign someone else to be the host or assign them to be a co-host directly from that option. You can also put somebody back in the waiting room. If Wayne is getting a little rowdy and we need to quarantine him, we can put him back in the waiting room. At the bottom of the participant pane are some nonverbal reactions. This is a setting that you would have to set for your meetings through the online interface, but I like these quite a lot. So instead of doing a formal poll right now, we can do what we call a straw poll. And if I were to ask, how many had at least one cup of coffee this morning, go to your participant pane and click yes or no, we can now see that we're getting some answers coming in. We have so far 8 yeses. And so we can kind of get a pulse of where our members are at the moment with any quick answer. It doesn't have to be a formal poll. 12 yeses, 14. I think we need more coffee in this room. And so that's those are the nonverbal reactions. There's also a more button with an ellipsis that has some extra options for things like thumbs up, thumbs down, so on and so forth. In the bottom right of the participant pane is another ellipsis, and this is yet more options. And you also have access to some security features here as well, where you can, did I zoom in on this one? I did, good. You can ask all to unmute, you can mute participants upon entry, and then these are other allowances, allowing them to unmute, rename, or enable that waiting room. I usually leave mute participants upon entry unchecked because I like for folks to be able to come in, have a little fellowship time, chit chat with each other, things like that. But once it's time to start the meeting, then I will click mute participants upon entry. That way any latecomers won't have their audio turned on and disrupt the meeting that's already in progress. So this participant pane here is docked to the Zoom window. In the top left, oh, Dee Dee, did you have a question? Or are you just playing with some tools? Okay. In the top left of the participant pane is an option to close the participant pane or to pop it out. If you pop it out, now becomes a free floating window. And so you can move it anywhere on your screen, and you can better organize your real estate. If you want to dock it back to your Zoom window, then using the ellipsis in the bottom right of the free floating participant pane, the bottom option is to merge to meeting window, and that docks it back to the Zoom window. Our next option over is the chat button. You hit that and it opens up the chat pane. Similar to the participant pane, you can hit the down arrow in the top left and pop it out. And now you have a free floating chat window. By default, your chat to field is set to everyone. And so all of the chats that you see in the chat box are to everyone. There's also an option to send a private chat to somebody using that drop-down menu, or as we learned, you can do that from the participant pane. But beware, private chats aren't really private. And that's because the host of a meeting gets a text transcript of all of the chats from the meeting at the end of the meeting, even the private chats. So just because your fellow attendees can't see the chats, the host can. So what does that mean? If you have something truly private to tell somebody else, Wayne, text instead. And from the chat pane, you can also send files back and forth. And we often do this with whether we need to share a PowerPoint or share a PDF, things like that. You can throw those directly into the chat box as well. Similar to the participant pane, if you want to redock your chat box, you can do that from the ellipsis, and the bottom option is to merge to meeting window. So why would it be important to dock or free float these meeting windows or these participant pane and the chat box? Well, that's because depending on what your setup is and how you're running your meeting, it can be advantageous. For me, my laptop screen, which you can see on this left picture, I have an external monitor, that's a TV up at top. And so my laptop screen, that's where I might have my PowerPoint, or that's where I see all of my video tiles. On my external monitor, I have the participant pane, so I can scroll through in case I need to find a participant and ask them a question. I have my chat box, that way I can see chats as they're coming in. And Meg, I did see your question and I'll get to that in just a minute, but I can see all of those things live. I can have a Word document open if I need to take some quick notes or use it as a parking lot. You can put your PowerPoint up there as your screen share. And so freeing up the real estate on your device will help you to have a better experience, because you don't have to go searching for things and go digging around through extra buttons, and it can help to de-stress your Zoom experience. Our next option over is the share screen option. So as I told you, I have an external monitor set up, and it's basically right above my laptop screen. And so what I want to show you here is when you open up the share screen dialog box, then screen one that's highlighted here is my laptop screen. Screen two is my external monitor. Why is that important? Because if we zoom in on our share screen dialog box, you can see that screen one is the laptop screen, screen two is the external monitor, and then we have all of our other stuff, all of our other applications. And so that distinction being, right now I'm sharing a screen, but I'm really only sharing a PowerPoint. I'm not actually sharing my entire screen. Sometimes that is advantageous. Sometimes you do want to show an Excel spreadsheet right next to a Word document, right next to a picture of an event. And so you can share that entire screen, but most often you're actually just sharing an application. And so you want to make sure to open up that application, that PowerPoint or whatever it is ahead of time, get it where you need to be in that presentation, and then it's going to show up here in this dialog box. If you have a lot of things open, like I always do, then there's going to be a link at the bottom that says show all windows. And so you can open that up. It shows all of your open applications. And so in this instance, let's pretend that I want to share a YouTube video. Okay, this is Rotary Responds. It's on YouTube. Because it's a video, you also want to enable a couple of extra options, which is to share computer sound and optimize for video clip. That's important because if you don't check share computer sound, then your attendees won't hear the video. And if you don't check optimize, then it can be kind of blurry and choppy. Once you select the application that you want to share, click the blue button to share. Now, once you are in the middle of a screen share, Zoom does some more crazy things. And so it's going to change your toolbar, and it doesn't remove any functionality, it just moves functionality. And so you still have access to your participant pane, you still have access to your chat pane and all that, but you might have to go fishing around for it under the ellipsis, and you get to your extra options over here. If you need to share a video and you forgot to click share computer sound, or you forgot to click optimize share, you don't have to stop your share to get back to those checkboxes. You actually still have access to them right here under the ellipsis. And so you can click those and put a little check mark next to them to enable those options. Did you know that if you have your mobile device in your Zoom meeting, you can share content from your phone? This actually is my phone, and pay no attention to the little Android monster in the back eating an apple. But why might we want to share a mobile device screen? Well, maybe we're doing a presentation for our club over Club Runner. Well, then we can open up Club Runner, and bada bing, bada boom. Now you are sharing with your entire club how to use Club Runner to find your fellow members, or to find upcoming events and all that kind of thing. And so you don't have to hover over them. In the old days, or nowadays, we can't hover over people from 6 feet apart. And so this is an excellent way to show how to use mobile applications. Maybe it's the district app that you want to show to your folks. And this is how you can do that simply with a screen share. If somebody else is sharing a screen, then you also have a couple of options. So for instance, I'm sharing a screen right now, and so you will see some options. Somewhere on your Zoom window, you'll see a little green bar that says you are viewing so-and-so's screen. and an option and some view options in a little drop down menu. Zoom ratio allows you to zoom in or out on that share. Uh, you generally don't need to mess with that. But if somebody is sharing something and you can't see it, then you can go to the zoom ratio and actually zoom in on that screen share in order to read some of that fine detail. And you can also exit full screen mode or put zoom into a free floating window. And you have options for side-by-side mode. Play with the options, see what works best for you and your system, but here is where to find those. And another neat tool is the Zoom Annotate toolbar. Anybody that has been through Rotary Leadership Institute Part 2, that's plug 4, will have experience with the Zoom Annotate toolbar during our team building exercise on building a club coat of arms. And so at that same view options drop down menu, you'll see an option to annotate. If you click that, then it opens up a new toolbar. You might ask, why does this drop down menu show annotate, but this drop down menu did not? That's because, keen observer, that is another security feature. You most of the time don't want folks to have access to annotate on your screen share, because then you can accidentally get scribbles and all sorts of stuff over your screen share. And so that is an option that you can check or uncheck on the fly to allow. And so if you're in the middle of a screen share, you go back to your security shield, and that bottom option you now have to whether you allow or not participants to annotate on top of shared content. In this exercise we're performing, we have everyone in the breakout room annotating on top of a PDF template. And so everyone's able to draw and type things and use little stamps and markers and all sorts of stuff. And so it can be advantageous. Another way to access that is under the ellipsis, and then you have an option to disable annotation for others. In Zoom, there are usually 3 or a dozen different ways to do anything. Our next option over is to record. Depending on the settings you have set up, you can either record to this computer or record to the cloud. What does that mean? If you go into your Zoom online interface, you have to make sure that you are logged in, go to the settings toolbar and the recording tab, and you have access or you find the button to allow local recording. And so this can either just be the host that's recording to their own device, or you can allow other participants to also record the meeting to their device. You can also allow cloud recordings, meaning that the recording doesn't go to your computer, it's instead going to the cloud. And so all of those recordings are saved under your Zoom account. And there are a bunch of different options in cloud recording. So I encourage you to spend a little time figuring out which of those are best for you and your setup. Scrolling down in the settings here, you also have an option for automatic recording. This is helpful if you're someone like me who often forgets to turn on a recording, and halfway through a meeting you're like, you know what, we should save this for prosperity, and I hit the recording button late. So what you can do is, for certain meetings or in your account, you can allow Zoom to automatically start a recording for your meeting. You might end up with extra material. Maybe it's the fellowship 15 or 30 minutes ahead of time, but you can always trim that stuff out. It's hard to add content if you didn't record it ahead of time. And another one to be aware of is the recording disclaimer. Whether or not you want your attendees to be aware that a recording is in progress. And sometimes, so the checkboxes at the bottom are whether they have to actually consent or do different things like that. Lots of options in here. Take a look, but those I wanted to bring your attention to. Our next option over is for breakout rooms. This is a favorite tool, one of our top favorite tools in Zoom, because instead of me standing up here on the stage lecturing to everybody like I am right now, in a breakout room, you're allowed to go into small group settings and interact on a more personal level. If you click the button, then it brings up the first dialog box, and this is where you set the number of rooms and whether or not to automatically or manually throw the participants into those rooms. We use this quite a lot in, guess what? Rotary Leadership Institute. That's 5. And I actually prefer to manually move our folks over into the rooms, because we often have a specific person that has to go into each room. In some of our other trainings, District Leadership Summit, RMDTI, Zone Institute, things like that, we actually want specific folks. We want a district membership chair in each of the different rooms, or we want folks from different clubs to be in each of those rooms. And so you can manually throw people into these rooms so that nobody is in there with their fellow club members. And so once we set the number of rooms, and whether we do it automatically or manually, it brings up the next drop-down menu. And this is where you have access to all of your rooms. You can rename the rooms if you need to. You can delete a room if you need to. And hitting the assign button is where it would bring up a checklist of all of the participants in your meeting, and you can check who goes into which room. And we have some questions coming in. Can you give us a handout on all the features? Yes, absolutely. There will be a video recording of this. So I could show a video from RI while people are eating and then change. Yes, absolutely, Linda. So you can show a video, as we have a few times today, as part of your screen share. And yes, Andy Hagen, we're always looking for more IT support. Great, thanks so much for those folks. And so from our breakout room, our next duty is to, let me click over here, is to set our options. Our top option is to move all participants into breakout rooms automatically. I always check this, because otherwise, when you open up your breakout rooms, your participants would actually have to click a button to join the room. It's an extra hurdle for folks that might be uncomfortable with the platform, so I just move folks automatically. I also always allow participants to return to the main room or the main session at any time, because say you're in a breakout room with one other person, you're doing a one-on-one pair activity. Well, maybe that other person, they fall off of the Zoom call, they lose internet connection. Well, now you're stuck in that room all by yourself and you can't do anything. So I always allow participants to return to the main session at any time. The next one is how long the room will be open. It could be however long. We typically are looking at 5 to 25 minutes, depending on the activity. I don't check the next one. And then the last one is pretty important. That's a countdown after closing the room. That means once that 10 minutes is up, then they get a little splash screen that says you have 15 seconds before you're whisked back into the main room. And so if a group is working on an activity, it gives them a little bit more time to make sure everything is wrapped up and nobody gets cut off in the middle of a sentence. And you can change that countdown timer. Once you have all of your settings in place, you open up the rooms and everybody gets whisked away to do their small group activities. And it's neat stuff. If we have a little bit of time at the end of our show, then we can play with those, but we might not. Our next option are another way to provide nonverbal reactions. And those are, there's a thumbs up, there's a claps. If you have the new Zoom update, there are little party hats and all sorts of things. And so you would find those under reactions. In probably the top right of your Zoom window is something itty bitty tiny called view. And so that is where you can switch between speaker view or gallery view. Gallery view is where you see all of the video tiles, all 50 or however many, all at one time. This is what I prefer, and this is what we prefer in our trainings because it most closely resembles an actual classroom where you can see whether or not Jay Dean is paying attention over there in the background, or what Kent is playing on his phone. And so I can engage my my people, and I can know if everyone's falling asleep. Well, it's time to ring the bell again to bring everybody back over. Speaker view is where one individual speaker is highlighted. That can be helpful for emphasis. The reason that I don't like to use that as a host is, I can spotlight somebody's view. If Zara was giving a speech to us, I could spotlight her view, and that forces speaker view on everybody else. And that's fine, except that you can't force back to gallery view. And so you would make those participants either be in speaker view for the rest of the meeting if they didn't know how to change it, or you have to make them manually go back to gallery view. Gallery view is what I prefer to stay in. Another point on this is, depending on the size of your meeting, those options might change. I did these screen captures with only one other device in the meeting room. And so in a larger meeting, you might actually have some more options on where things go. But this is another place where you can exit full screen view for Zoom. In the top left is a little green shield. If you click on that, that is a shortcut to settings. And so all along the left side, you have different tabs for different types of settings, but is a quick way to access those. The next one over is the meeting information. If you click on that, that's where you get your meeting ID and password. Maybe somebody forgot to click a link, or somebody didn't get a link and you need to text them the meeting ID and password. That's where you find that information. You can also copy the meeting link and email it to them from there. It's a quick access to your meeting information. With the new Zoom update, you also have the option to move video tiles. On a screen capture, a cursor doesn't get captured, and so you can't see the Mickey Mouse glove hand that the cursor turns into. But if you hover over the video tiles in gallery view, you see a big white glove. Click on a video tile and move it around, and now you can manually arrange who goes where on your Zoom screen. In trainings, that's particularly helpful. Maybe you want all membership team this morning. You could have had all of your membership folks up on the top bar. And so we know going down the line, who's next to be able to talk, and you have all your participants next or something like that. Or everyone who doesn't have their video turned on, you can move them to the end of the list. Maybe they're on the second page. Whatever your case is, moving those video tiles is very powerful, and we use that quite a lot. And we're very happy that that has come to us in the latest Zoom update. Also, from the video tiles, you have a few options. If you hover over your own video tile, in the top right will be two little blue rectangles. One of them is an ellipsis with three little dots, and from there you can rename yourself. If you hover over somebody else's video tile and hit the ellipsis, then you have a few options. You can, I did not zoom in, you can ask them to unmute, or you can initiate a chat, a private chat with them directly from that video tile. If you're the host, you can assign somebody else to be the host from the video tile. If you're the host, you can assign new co-hosts in your meeting. And so you have a few different options there. So we've looked at some of the tools in Zoom. So let's see, what do we need to consider when we're working in a Zoom meeting? So as a matter of process, periodically, you really should perform a speed test on your own network and reset your router periodically. You know that if your computer is acting kind of goofy, you need to shut down and restart. Well, your router is no different. And so make sure to power it down, your modem and your router, if they're separate devices, power them down, leave them off 15, 30 seconds, power them back up. If your internet is running kind of sluggish, we always start with a shutdown restart. So periodically you want to check those numbers. In a small meeting, I've mentioned I like to enable a waiting room. And so that it helps for time management. You don't want folks coming in too early. You don't want folks showing up 30 minutes before your actual meeting time. But also it's a way to make sure that you don't have anybody that doesn't belong in your meeting coming through. That's a little bit impractical for larger meetings, in which case you can use a registration. So that's precisely what we did here for this type of meeting. Is there's a registration ahead of time, and you get a unique link to log in. And so that is another hurdle that a Zoom bomber would be caught by. We as Rotarians, we like fellowship, and so it's advisable to open your meeting early. Open it up so that you can have a time of fellowship. That's precisely what we do, or what we did on this meeting, and what we do for these types of trainings and assemblies and conferences and things like that. Open it up ahead of time so that I can ask Andy Hagen how the hay cutting went this season, or catch up with Roberto. I haven't talked to him since 6 RLI. And so, allow some time for folks to chit chat with each other. That's why I don't initially set the option to mute participants upon entry, because I want to encourage that fellowship. We've talked about this. Record your meetings. You can either make sure to do it at the right time, which I never do, or just set it up to record automatically and trim out what you don't need. You can even trim it in YouTube when you publish those videos. You can trim out the heads and the tails. Set your co-hosts. And so I sometimes have an unstable network where I'm out of town, and so we have rural internet. It gets a little wonky sometimes. And so if my internet goes down, or if we have a power outage and I'm out and I didn't set any co-hosts, that just killed the meeting. But if you set co-hosts and the host goes down, well, now your meeting is still alive, because those other folks now get promoted. That one other person will get promoted to a host. And not just that, but now you have several folks that are able to mute, or someone who's, maybe they left their microphone on by accident. If you need to kick somebody out or whatever, then having those extra co-hosts are helpful. As folks are coming in, many clubs have a greeter that sits at the front door in the restaurant and greets people by name as they come in. This is no different. You can greet people by name as they're coming into your Zoom space, and it lets them know that you know that they're there and appreciate their time. You also can ask participants to rename themselves. Maybe they're on their child's device and it doesn't have their real name on there. Encourage them to rename to their preferred name, so that we can call people by name. What if I didn't know who Kathy Preddy was? Well, now I can address Kathy by her first name. She knows exactly who I'm talking to. And so it helps build that relationship. And we talked about this already, but right before your meeting start time, under the participant pane, under the ellipsis, check the box to mute participants upon entry. That way, anybody coming in late to the meeting doesn't have their microphone turned on and disrupt the meeting already in progress. And so some tips for online learning. Make sure you're muted when you're not talking. Be yourself, be respectful of others, ask questions through the chat pane, use reactions to engage with your fellow class members. Think before you write. Remember, chats are not really private. Utilize the raise hand feature if you want to ask a question. That can be raising your actual hand, or from your own video tile, or from the participant pane, you can raise a virtual hand. What that does for the hosts and co-hosts is it throws you to the top of the participant list, and it puts you at the top left of the gallery view, so that we know if somebody has a question, we can get to them immediately. And set up an intentional space where you're going to be conducting your meeting. maybe it's on your back porch if that works for you. I can't do that because the chickens won't allow me to have a nice, safe space. I have a separate study in the house. I'm right next to a window. There's no radio or TV in here, and there's treatments on the wall so that it can cut down on ambient noise and echoes and things like that. So be in an intentional space. Is there more to learn about Zoom? There certainly is, and here is a great place to learn some of those things. I just found this blog yesterday, as a matter of fact, and it has lots of great ideas and tools and things, and I'm going to copy some links into the chat pane for you. So this blog is the top link. I encourage you to take a look when you get a chance. Again, those links are in the chat box. There's another one. Of course, Zoom has a YouTube channel and they have fantastic training videos. And so go to the Zoom YouTube channel, or lots of non-Zoom channel folks have put up some little training or how-tos on how to do Zoom things. That is the second link in the chat box. And so something else that we want to touch on, I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time on this, but these are hybrid meetings. And that means that you're doing it online and in person. Some considerations: you want to make sure that wherever you are, probably a restaurant, has reliable, secure Wi-Fi. You don't want to jump on their open network or their guest network. You want to make sure to use their private network. You have to get the passcode for it. And that is for the security of your own device. You don't want to be exchanging information over an open network. You probably already have a projector and screen if you were in the past sharing PowerPoints and things like that. But now you're going to use that projector and screen to show your video, your Zoom gallery view and things like that. You might need some external speakers so that the people in the room can hear the people on Zoom, because your computer speakers will probably not be loud enough. So you'll need some external speakers. And depending on how you have your setup, you might need external microphones. If you have several of those, that means you might need a mixing board. And I happen to have one over here. This is a little 8. Oh, you can't see that. Oh, man. Just trust me that there's a mixing board there that's invisible. And I actually use that for my church videos. In producing all that, we have lots of different channels coming in. If you don't want to or don't have extra microphones, you can use another device. You can use a phone on a tripod set up in the room, and that can be your external camera and your external microphone. In addition, you'll want a room camera so that folks in Zoom can see who all is in the actual physical room. It just helps people to know, hey, I wonder if Fred showed up today. And so you can go to the room camera and see who's in that meeting space. In the most recent edition of the Rotary Membership Minute bulletin that came out, I think on October 15, if you scroll down to the bottom of that, and that's actually the third link in the chat box, then there is a little paragraph on hybrid meetings. And there is a link to a technical document that was put out by another paired zone that has fantastic information on what that physical setup might be. On the simple end, from one laptop with the internal computer, internal camera and microphone, to a complicated setup where you're using a mixing board and several microphones and several cameras and a whole big production. Tailor it to what you need for your purposes. Do we have any questions? This will give me a chance to go through the chat box here.
Okay, while he's reviewing the chat box, I am going to start his poll.
We're all very curious to know what questions I have.
Yes, he He did not, for all the committee chairs, he did not get me his questions. I had to generate them on my own.
And they're lovely questions. Thank you, Nancy. And so while the poll is going on, just to recap, I am Justin Jones. You can reach me by email or phone anytime. If you snap that QR code, it will enter my contact info into your phone for you. Call, text, email, anytime. I'd be happy to help you.
And Justin, this is Debbie. Eddie had a question. Where do we go to see if we need to update our Zoom?
Wonderful question. Thanks so much for asking that. Give me 1 minute and I will show you how to do that. Even with an external monitor, space is still precious.
Okay, we have 45 out of the 52 that have responded. I'm going to give it about another 15 seconds, and then I will show you the results.
While we're waiting on that, I am going to switch over here. And so this is how you can know if you have the latest Zoom update. So go to zoom.us or just Google Zoom. From the Zoom home page, in the top right is a drop-down menu for resources, and the very top option is download Zoom client. Click that, brings us to a new page, and we're at the download center, and we see Zoom client for meetings, and this is our latest version here. And so you can download that and install it, not while you're hosting a meeting, and ask me how I know. And then that will update you to the latest Zoom version. Thanks so much for that question.
And there's the sharing as far as what our clubs are doing. And there were a couple different options there, and it's interesting what we're all doing.
Thank you, Nancy. Let's see. Debbie, were you able to find any more questions in the chat box that I neglected?
Unless I missed something, I think most of the others were addressed in conversation that you had, or Nancy covered several of them, like where to go get more information, and reconfirming that this presentation today will be available for you to go back and kind of watch at the same time you're actually doing some of the things that Justin mentioned. So I don't think
Excellent.
I want to
put
mention
my contact info back up. Go on ahead.
Just want to mention I put other because we are actually still doing virtual only, but November 6th we're starting our hybrid meeting, and so we're gonna give it a shot and see how well it works for us. We're such a large club. We're not quite sure how it's going to work, but we're going to do our best to be safe, spread out, and allow people that want to be in person to go in person. The ones that are happy virtually continuing virtual. So we'll try to provide some updates along the way.
If you wouldn't mind, send me that link and I would be very interested to join you for that.
And Wayne, another resource on a large club who is doing hybrid meetings is the Victoria Club. There's 3 in Victoria. So I'm talking just about the main Victoria Club. Point of contact would be their secretary, Linda Caldwell. And Linda, if you're still online, if you can put your email address on there, that will help Wayne, because I know you have really worked through quite a few issues on a large club hybrid meeting.
So I just shared our website, rotaryhrl.org, for those that want to keep up with how we do the hybrid. I had a couple people message me privately as well. So we just posted on our website, but November 6th will be the first, and we meet Fridays at noon.
Excellent. Thanks so much, Wayne.
Boy, Victoria is also doing a Facebook feed on their meetings. in addition to Zoom and in person. Good for them.
Yeah, so thank you, Linda, for mentioning that. That is something I didn't talk about today, but I can touch on that real quick. So we did this for the district assemblies um, way back in May or whenever that was. Gosh, that was a long time ago. Where not only do you have this Zoom meeting here, but you can also have a live feed either into Facebook Live or into YouTube Live. And the argument for one versus another is a different train of thought, but you can have that live feed. And so what that allows you is you can have, maybe you need a closed meeting. And so actually we use that for the student four-way test speech contest because we didn't want that many participants in the Zoom meeting. We wanted that locked down to basically the judges and all that. Everybody else was able to view it live through the YouTube live stream. And so they're still able to see everything happening live. They're just not interacting. And so a benefit to even having an open Zoom meeting and doing that live stream is one, you don't have to upload your recording to YouTube after the fact because it's already there in your live feeds. And two, and I kind of like this, is that if somebody misses something in a presentation, maybe you have a big, your mayor is coming in and he's going to give a big speech. And if somebody misses that speech or they come in late, well, even from the live feed, you can rewind on YouTube, get caught up on that speech. And by the time the club is doing business or whatever it is, then you can fast forward back to live. And so it gives you an instantaneous access to video on demand, basically. And so there definitely are some benefits to that. The way you would set that up is from the online settings interface, and way at the bottom of the settings menu is an option to stream to YouTube or to Facebook. And then there's some other settings you have to mess with there. But thank you, Linda, for bringing that up. That certainly is an option to stream live through Facebook and YouTube.
And